Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Documentary Club. I'm Jeff Jones, and with me, as always, is Jack. How you doing today, Jack?
Doing very well. Hello to all the folks that have joined us on the live for an interesting look at Face to Face with Scott Peterson. Back in the
Well,
news after all these years.
we're just coming off a couple of weeks ago. We covered another documentary
Yep.
about kind of the angle of Lacey Peterson, and this one is more of the angle of Scott Peterson and his, I don't know, would you say potential innocence, or that's kind of the angle of this one?
It is definitely the angle. I don't know about the end result, what that's going to be, but certainly some interesting questions are raised from the different things that have come out in the last let's just say year or so. Definitely.
Interesting documentary from the point of view of Scott, interviews with Scott, him kind of defending himself, a lot of with his sister-in-law, that story of how she became a lawyer. Overall, I mean, I think it's a well put together documentary. I just want to say, like, from the get-go, I have an open mind. If there's something I missed, or if there's something that's, I looked through the wrong prism, or there's a distortion in the facts, of course I want to hear the truth. Going into it at this point in the beginning of the documentary, I am not, I'll just be honest that I think Scott Peterson is responsible for the death of his wife and his unborn child. But like I said, if there's evidence out there that can concretely point away from him and say, you know what, we got it wrong, then I want to hear it, and I think it's fair game.
We must. We have to do that because otherwise we're just hypocrites. I mean, that's just my opinion, and I'm pretty much the same boat that you're in. I think he did it. I think he's responsible, and I don't lay that at the feet of just one thing, or not even just two things. There are multiple layers of things that occurred that he's directly responsible for, him alone. Another thing, he wouldn't talk to the media in the beginning. Not really. He didn't want anything to do with the media. And then until finally, I think it rolled around in January after Lacey is missing. End of January, he finally decides to do this interview with Diane Sawyer. Oh my God, he shouldn't have done it because he's like, well, yeah, I told Lacey about the affair. This is Amber Fry. I told Lacey about the affair, and she was fine with it. Are you kidding me? Your 8.5 month pregnant wife is okay with you having an affair with this beautiful young woman? So many things, man. I'm getting off a tangent here.
No, go
Yeah.
ahead, tangent away.
From just a reasonable standpoint, looking at this from 10,000 feet, that's not going to work out for, I think, 99.5% of the population in the world. They're going to look at this and say, dude, why would you say something like that about Lacey? She can't. She can't say, well, yeah, that's exactly what he told me, and I was fine with my husband. I thought that we were in such love and all this. No, no.
It's that chuckle that Amber Fry has when he says, "I never cheated on you," and she's like,
Wait, what? Right?
it's the same as, like, it's like the same reaction that she has in the interview. Diane Sawyer has in the interview when she says, "You really expect me to believe that your 8.5 month pregnant wife is okay with you having a girlfriend?"
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And you expect people, and his response is, well, you don't. I caught that. You don't. I mean, nobody knows our relationship. Well, yeah,
Ex-
and no one can verify it because your wife is dead. No one can
Right.
verify whether you told her or not. Is that the thing, that if you murdered her, is that the thing that was the catalyst for this, that she found out with one of your 4 or 5 cell phones that you had?
Well, that is the question that we don't know. That maybe she found something and she questioned him and was like went ballistic and he smothered her or choked her out.
Yeah,
We don't know. We just
we
don't
don't
know.
know. We don't know. But what we do know is that we have clips to share on this documentary. So why don't
Yes,
we
we
start
do.
with 224, the court TV reporter Ted Rollins explains about the intense public interest in this case. And before we watch that clip, I think we've mentioned it a couple times. Just, for good or for bad, there are cases that come along that captivate the nation and the world. This was one of those cases that just captivated viewership and, cable news and court TV. They love it when they find one. They're always on the lookout for this case that we just can't look away from. This was one of them. And happening in 2002, this might have been the first one in the 21st century that really captivated us. This is kind of the first real true crime case of the 21st century that captivated the country.
It had all the elements of drama, extreme drama. Polarizing, probably not the exact word, because it wasn't, to me, it really wasn't a North and South Pole opposites. Yeah, I'm sure there's some on Scott's side, but I think it turned pretty quickly because of how he handled things from the beginning. Clear your name if you had nothing to do with it. Get it out of the way now so they can move on. And that didn't
like I said last time we talked about this case, if I'm in his position, I'm pleading with them. What do I need to clear my name so you can move on?
Right. What do you need from me so we can move past me and you can go find her?
Go find her.
Let's do it right now. Let's do it right now. Get everyone in here. Tell me what you need.
Now, from what I know today, the only exception to that rule is the polygraph. That I might not take the polygraph because I know that they can be misused and here's the real problem with the polygraph, whether they're accurate, inaccurate, or put in, are admissible in court or not. Investigators can lie to you about the results.
Yep.
They can say you failed when you passed.
Yep. And depending on how that polygrapher sets you up.
All right, let's check out our first clip.
Yep.
This was a beautiful, pregnant, missing woman. And then Scott Peterson became the most hated man on the planet. The things that he did and said and lied about. How did he do it? And how did he not leave behind any sort of a trail of evidence? It's the reason that people to this day are talking about this case.
The LA Innocence Project is taking up the effort to set Peterson free.
I would say borderline shocking.
A van found close that has a mattress in it that has blood stains.
This van is of high interest.
Could we have gotten it wrong?
Before we go into a little bit about the trial, or before we move on into this, there's something that I just want to address, or ask you a question, or pose a question to the audience as well. Is, how do you feel about the Innocence Project taking on this case?
Well, I think that we have to be fair in this, even though I think he did it, at the same time, if you look at the trial, it is circumstantial. There is no direct proof used against him. The cops do not know how she died. So, yeah, okay, you can add up a lot of other events and maybe come to that conclusion. Certainly we didn't see everything. We found the webpage that it has just thousands and thousands of different documents and photos. And at the same time, again, no direct proof. However, you join that in with the other things of his actions, it looks really bad. But again, I think for the Innocence Project, there's untested DNA that may have some viability. So I think just given their track record, they like untested DNA to see where it can lead.
I think it's fair. I think it's
I say test it all. Test it. Get it out of the way.
I agree. Test it. Let's find some resolution to this. Let's find some finality to it. And if the DNA comes back as Scott's DNA, then bingo, you got him even harder.
Mm-hmm.
If it comes back to Lacey's DNA or Connor's DNA, not going to change anything.
And if it comes back to some unknown, then it's gone. It's buried. It's done. It's not It's not relevant. Because scattered throughout these 3 episodes is this documentary in which I call the interviewer in my notes. She gets involved in this, and she goes, because Scott was taken off of death row, then begins to be allowed to have people come to talk to him in prison. And so he agrees. I guess there was phone calls. He agrees to be interviewed by this documentarian.
Scott Peterson can now have video visits up to 15 minutes, whether it be about the evidence or the lies that he told, and whether you think he's innocent or guilty, there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
I think she makes a really good point there, and I hate to interrupt her so quickly. And she says this case has a lot of unanswered questions.
It does.
Most cases do.
They do. There's always unanswered questions in complicated cases. Always.
We never get answers to every question.
No.
We hope to get as close as we can, but we have a hard enough time answering the most important questions, much less all of them.
That's right.
That's kind of how this documentary is framed, through the eyes of this documentarian and through these face-to-face calls with Scott Peterson, 15 minutes a pop. And so that's where the footage of him is strung together.
Correct.
But let's go back to 2002 into that 911 call.
My daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park.
And her husband been alive?
We talked about 8:30 Monday night. She had called to let me know that they were going to be over Christmas Eve for dinner. When I answered the phone, he said, "Mom, is Lacey there?" And I told him no.
Which is a point that I brought up before, which is one of the first kind of problems I have with Scott's story is that, we've been over this before, but I'll go over it again. Scott said, well, she was going to maybe go to the grocery store and then she was going to walk the dog. When I got home, her car was in the driveway. Her keys were there. Her purse was there. The dog was in the backyard. So I just assumed she was at mom's.
Yeah, how's that work out?
And her car is in the driveway. How did she get to mom's?
Right. Unless mom drove over to get her for some reason, had to come get her adult daughter.
And she didn't take her ID. She didn't take her purse. She didn't take her phone.
Nope.
That's that's one of the first things that I go, come on.
That doesn't work for me. Sorry, it just doesn't. Well, I guess you have to ask, did that ever happen before? Ever?
Right. Has mom ever come to just pick her up and then she didn't take her purse? Does she leave her purse at home often?
Yeah, her purse and her cell phone and her ID.
She's an 8.5 month pregnant woman. Now, 8.5 months is almost 9 months. People go into labor at any minute.
Oh yeah.
And that's the other thing with his behavior. Knowing that she could give birth just about at any moment, why aren't you by her side 24/7? Why aren't you, doting on her? And let me rub your feet and, how are you feeling today? And what do you want to do? And as soon as I get home from work, I'm coming and we're going to do this. And I'm going to be, just in case something happens. Now we're in crunch time. We're in that labor window.
Yeah. Not driving 3 hours, just driving time to take your boat down to the Modesto Bay.
This is something that just popped in my head. With that said, she's 8.5 months pregnant, etc. If I call home and she doesn't answer, and I call her cell phone and she doesn't answer, I'm already starting to worry from the harbor.
I'm calling someone. Then. I would call mom then. It's like, Lacey's not answering.
I'm an hour and a half away. Can you drive over and check? She won't answer the phone. She doesn't answer. And I haven't heard from her. And that's really unlike her. And she's 8.5 months pregnant.
Right. Call the neighbor.
And she's had dizzy spells recently.
Right. She might have fallen. She might be laying in bed trying to give labor because she couldn't, whatever.
And she couldn't get up. Right.
Right.
Doesn't think to call mom then.
Nothing.
But after the evidence indicates she's not at mom's is when I better call mom. It's just the more I think about it, the more it adds up to not good.
Yeah, it's not adding up.
Yeah. And so we got a clip of Detective Brocchini. Do you want to watch that one, or do you want to go to the washing
Yeah.
machine?
We can watch a little bit of Brocchini.
Okay, we'll watch a little bit of Brocchini.
When the phone rings up here on a holiday, it's not good news. It's a pregnant lady. We got a gut feeling something ain't right. Hey, she's 8 months pregnant. We need to find her. Lock the house up. Don't let anybody go in it till I get there. And when I get there, introduce me to Scott Peterson. There had to have been 30 people in the driveway. They were knocking on doors, yelling her name. Scott was there. I told him who I was and what I was there for, and I was, there to help. He didn't have any urgency about him that I noticed.
He was just calm. He was pleasant. He was polite. The first place you look and the first place you have to clear out is the person closest to the victim, and that was her husband.
And that was her husband.
Yep.
The first thing that the detective noticed, something ain't right about him. Something's off about him. He's calm. He's too calm. Right.
I'd be insane.
I would be blaming myself. I'd be like, I should have been here. I'd be losing my mind. I'd be, begging anyone to help. I would have went to the grocery store and asked them at the grocery, did you see this woman?
Right. Anything.
He didn't do that.
A shower.
Ate some pizza, had some milk, take a shower, and do a load of wash, which leads us into the next clip.
Yeah.
He went right to the washer, took these rags out, and took his clothes off and put them in the washer. To me, he's just making excuses for evidence that we're finding or seeing.
Why are your clothes that are just wet? All you really need to do is hang it up, let it dry.
Right, or just take them off and put them in the laundry hamper,
right.
Wash your rags, and then wash your clothes later.
And at this point, Scott needs to, he's not an idiot. He's not an idiot.
No.
He has to know that they're going to be looking at him first thing. And even if he didn't do it, he has to know that he's going to be the first suspect, because the person closest to Brocchini just said it, and everybody knows the person closest to the victim is the number one suspect.
And as far as they knew, he's the last one she talked to when she was alive. He is the very last person.
When Brocchini took a first walk through the house with the other officers, one of them, said the husband, and then he realized I was there, kind of turned around. Brocchini's questions were not questions, they were accusations.
I told Scott, I have to eliminate you as being involved in her disappearance or anything.
Can you guys end marriage trouble?
Sort of this perfect couple who everyone said had a great relationship.
Well, Chris, I beg to differ. Otherwise, Chris does not date Amber Frey.
That's right.
That doesn't happen.
We know that he told the neighbor and the family, her family, that he went golfing. And then he changed it to fishing.
Correct.
When they found out that he went fishing.
He's really concerned, but what does he do? Nothing concerning.
Yeah, I know there's this narrative that I wasn't concerned or something, but there were so many times when I was on the edge. I was surprised to read that in their reports. And it's only reported falsely.
If he was really on edge, why didn't he let that emotion out to show everyone how you really felt? If you're burying it, why would you do that? This is real life. Your pregnant wife is missing. No one knows where she is.
Or the girl that you're married to.
Yeah, the girl you're married to. Yeah, that's right.
As he says later to Amber Frey, the girl that I'm married to. You mean your wife?
Yeah. That one you took the vows with? I don't know why anyone would do that. I really don't.
The first real evidence, if you want to call it, in the narrative that becomes questionable is the dog being found, and at what time, because that sets the timeline.
It does solidify the timeline in the police's mind. This was from a neighbor named Karen Service. It was based off of a receipt where she went to the grocery store or whatever, and she had, they did the drive from that, that neighborhood to the store. try to give a pretty, I guess, relative timeline to when she found the dog.
Right.
She knew the dog shouldn't be unattended, so she put it in the back area of the house. She went to a retail store in downtown Modesto and made a purchase. The receipt was time-stamped. Through that receipt, we were able to backtrack drive time at about 10:18 in the morning. Whatever happened to Lacey happened before 10:18 in the morning.
Because of Karen's service, 10:18 is that magic number. Anything after 10:18 didn't matter.
They drew the conclusion that the dog in the street meant Lacey was already dead.
So that 10:18 does become a sticking point. You're going to say, well, 10:18 was when she put the dog in, but the dog was probably didn't run, there in 2 minutes. So the dog's been out for how long? Who do we know? Probably more than 5 minutes, probably more than a half hour. So 10:18 is that sticking point, but really it's much earlier than that because the dog didn't just show up 2 minutes after she noticed it. It's important because we also tie that in later to people spotting her in the park or spotting a pregnant woman in the park, which comes up later.
And the neighborhood.
We want to hear, as this documentary is from Scott's point of view, we kind of want to feature.
Yeah.
Scott says that cops had confirmation bias. So let's watch Detective Brocchini wants to search the house again.
Yeah.
And Scott refuses.
We wanted to go look deeper into the house, and then we just hand him this form, just sign right here, and we can do all of that. And he's like, you don't expect me to sign this without a lawyer. Scott, we got a search warrant. You got to get out. We're going to do it anyway.
Scott looks at the search warrant and he says to Al, where's the trust? When he should have been concerned more about where she is and is she going to come back?
We're not talking about them stumbling upon your porno stash. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not talking about them. Oh, they're going to find out that I've been, cheating on my taxes.
Right.
They don't give a shit about that stuff.
They're not worried about them finding, a little bit of weed. They don't care about any of that.
I would love to have a lawyer pipe up on this. What would you say to your client?
Right. At that point in time, buddy, I think I'd go ahead and give him permission.
And then the next clip that I wanted to check out is Scott Peterson is claiming that he is, being targeted and that they have a confirmation bias.
Yeah. I think it's called confirmation bias, where they only look at evidence which can support their bias. Not to look for Lacey, but to look for evidence against me. There's no love, there's no struggle, there's nothing like that. And yet, make a day to focus on me.
I got a problem.
Yep.
Number one, if you weren't there, how do you know there's no sign of struggle? How do you know that there's no blood that someone cleaned up before they left? How do you know? How are you so sure that if they find blood, that it has to be you, Scott?
That's right.
You don't know that.
Gone for hours.
Find a sign of struggle. Find a sign of struggle and go, well, yeah, there's something happened here. It doesn't necessarily mean it was Scott. So see where his paranoid brain is going?
I'm guessing he was gone at least minimum of 4 hours. I'm going to guess more like 5 or 6, but I don't know that.
I'm just in the detective's bay, and we had 2 gals answer the tip phones. And she's typing, Scott Peterson's my boyfriend. And she says, my name is Ember Fry, and I'm dating Scott Peterson.
And in November, Scott gets a hold of Amber, and he meets her down in Fresno, and they just start this whirlwind romance.
She tells me he calls every day. So I go in the Radio Shack right next door. I said, I'm going to buy you a cassette recorder. And it ain't even 5 seconds I plug it in.
I tell you how special you are, and you're unique and everything. But you and I can feel you in my arms. I feel your lips.
Thought we'd turn up the heat a little bit on that and have her be a little bit more confrontational on her calls.
about her missing and this tragedy, and that this will be the first holidays without her?
Scott had told her the same day that he bought the boat, he had actually lost his wife, and this was going to be his first Christmas without her.
You know, there's one point that I wanted to back up, and it was earlier in the clip, and that was he calls every day.
That's right. Every day.
From what phone? From what phone?
Exactly. Well,
Now,
again,
if we dig into those phone records and we figure that out, was it from one of his burner cell phones? Because he's, as I said before, he's not a dumb guy. He's not going to be calling his girlfriend from a phone that the bill goes to the house.
Did he have a burner phone and this other, his main phone would be, free and clear? Wouldn't matter.
The Lacey phone, right?
Yeah, right. Lacey would never.
The Amber phone, you get the Lacey phone.
That's right. He was caught with 4 or 5 phones when he was arrested.
For tax purposes, you got your personal phone and your business phone. I get that. You don't need more than that.
Our family did hire an investigator named Gary Ermoyan.
Modesto Police Department was starting to focus on Scott as a suspect.
Scott Peterson had left home sometime shortly after 10 a.m. that morning. And the evidence shows that Karen Service was putting that dog in the Peterson's backyard and closing the gate around 10:18 a.m.
If anyone is seeing Lacey alive in the neighborhood after that point in time, Scott is innocent.
We're not sure that anyone did see her alive after that.
Right.
And if the dog is there at 10:18, she ain't.
Yeah.
I mean, she's gone before 10:18. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can keep saying these things that bring in doubt, but it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the storyline for me.
Right. There were claims made right after this that the cops weren't checking all these tips, but now that claim is refuted later on about these witnesses that allegedly saw Lacey and the dog making this 10-block walk that she allegedly made.
Well, I think it's important for this angle, so why don't we play a little bit of that?
Okay.
That the cops weren't checking in tips.
That they didn't feel as though investigators were taking them seriously or even responding to their tips.
Told them what I saw and who I saw, but no one called or came over and talked to us at all.
I don't believe the Modesto police were following the same leads. We're already focused on Scott.
Because they couldn't eliminate him.
That's right. He leaves that part out, which this guy would know. The closest people have to be cleared immediately.
Just because they didn't check in with everybody, okay, yeah, they should have. That really rounds out episode 1. There is an April 16th, 2024 status hearing. And so that was an interesting little event about his case. They're trying to move forward on the case and get some DNA and some other items that were never put into evidence and to try to develop that. But let's cruise on over to episode 2.
Again, this is Scott Peterson talking from now. I think he gives some excuses that I'm just not buying, dude. I want to, but I can't.
Why didn't you tell the police right away about Amber Fry?
I didn't tell people because I wanted the search to continue. She tried to turn it into a relationship after the fact, but it simply wasn't.
What? After we hear these phone calls between these two, I'm sorry. It doesn't work. Like I said, it just didn't work for me, man.
They were talking about like moving in together or whatever. And he was so good with her kid. And well, do you ever want to have kids? No, your kid's enough for me. I'm happy with that. And
well, yeah. And we just heard that call a few minutes ago. You're so, what do you know how wonderful you are? You're so wonderful.
Yep. And I can take care of you and be with you forever. And
that's not a side hustle. It's not friends with benefits. This is somebody you care about, or he's lying. Psychopath. Okay, never mind. You definitely want to introduce, I think, this Mike Gudgel, because he plays a real key role from here to the very end.
I'm Mike Gudgel. I've been involved in the Peterson case for almost 2 decades now.
When I first arrived,
A couple days after Christmas Day,
it was what I call a complete media feeding frenzy.
there were 5 or 6 witnesses who saw Lacey, so we knew that the police narrative wasn't solid. And then we heard
That there had been a burglary next door.
Medina's left December 24th at about 10:30 a.m. They returned home December 26th at about 4:30 in the afternoon.
when the news of the burglary came out, we assumed immediately that it would be a big break in the case.
I was coming home from the hand therapist, and I thought, oh, who are those people on the Medina's front lawn? They turned around and looked at me, and I felt hostility. I don't need to be looking at them or waving or anything. I'll just go on home.
So there's a sign that says, we report all suspicious activity except that time. Why didn't you report it? You felt hostility. And then in the neighborhood, and you're in a neighborhood watch area. I don't know. It's definitely something that I think should be looked into. You know, if there was an argument, you know, she says that she thought that maybe she saw Lacey arguing with them. Okay, it's possible.
The timing of that event, when it really happened, and it being solved as quickly as it was. The first guy they brought in, he fessed up almost immediately without hardly even a fight. Again, talking about a confidential informant, which I got a real problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
When it's presented in the court of law, you have the right to face your accuser. That's part of the Constitution. I don't care if we like Scott Peterson or not. It doesn't matter to me. You can't put a bag over somebody's head and hide them in the corner. You can't do it. Oh, but
And so that informant, said there was up to like 5 people involved?
That's right. That's exactly right.
So next thing, Amber Fry has a press conference.
Yeah, girlfriend. It took a lot of guts. I don't give a damn how you slice this.
You know, and I don't think anyone faults Amber Fry. Nobody. Not even her family. Her family's like, thank you for coming forward.
Scott kind of threw some shade on it there, though. In that interview, he's like,
he certainly did.
She would act like this was more than it really was. No, she really didn't, man.
The press conference of all press conferences was when they marched out Amber Fry.
I am very sorry for Lacey's family and the pain that this has caused them.
Wow, what a development that is.
Support for Scott Peterson has wavered since police told Lacey's family.
Scott had been declining interview requests consistently.
Have you taken a polygraph test?
So he decided, all right, I'll do a few interviews.
I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance.
He told Lacey about the affair, and she was okay with it.
It's still laughable.
What?
Every time I see it.
Why would you say that during this interview, dude? Keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about something like that.
Did she know about the affair? Yeah, I told her.
Yeah, I told her. No big deal.
Why say that? Why not just be like, no, of course not.
Exactly. Of course she didn't know. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. People would have understood that better than you lying.
So the next clip that I want to show is an important sticking point related to the anchors. And there were 2 homemade anchors that were found, but they were not kept.
Well, you have to understand that, we don't really show a lot of it, but there was a massive search effort for Lacey. Massive. Hundreds of people, both professional and just volunteer people. They were searching the bay and they found 2 homemade anchors, but they didn't keep them. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't keep that.
I don't either.
Did you find?
We found 2 homemade anchors. They looked like they were formed in a large coffee can. It was determined that they were not connected, so they were thrown back into the bay.
Why do you do that?
How can you just suddenly determine they're not connected? How did that work? Because they weren't like the one found in his boat? That's not enough. That's the freaking concrete that it was made from.
There you go. We're looking for homemade anchors. You found 2 that resemble it, but it was determined. Who determined? Who
That's right.
freaking determined? And how did they determine? Because it wasn't science.
No.
That's
If it was-
aggravating.
It's very aggravating. And if it was shape, that's not enough because that could have been used. Scott could have used that. Another
Well, they're
device as a
22 years
form.
later, probably still laying out there.
Yeah, but attempts have been made to recover them and they've never found them again. The guy throws them back in the bay for some reason after somehow it's determined that they're not connected. Something's not right in this for me at all. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. The other thing I don't like is coming up in the next couple clips here. Do you want to talk about the contents of the car?
Yeah, that's a big problem for me too. The contents of the car are another big problem, and how all that went down and what we found. Just a little bit of digging in that website that we found out. You go ahead
That's
and
his
talk
mom's
about it.
car.
Yeah, this is a big sticking point for you. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, that was his mom's car, right?
Yep.
And the contents: cook stove, camping gear, $15,000 cash, extra clothes, a little bit of food,
4 cell phones,
4 cell phones, credit cards in his name, credit cards in his family name, a fake ID, not a fake ID, a real ID of his brother's from a picture on that ID that he changed his appearance to look like. Not suspicious at all.
He tried to justify that saying, well, I used that so I could play, Troy Pines, the golf course, get the discount rate because I would show I lived in the county. Really?
But you got $15,000 cash and you're worried about $100.
Right.
And this is you're saving a little bit of cash right now is important.
And you're carrying around basically thousands of dollars worth of equipment inside your mom's car.
Right.
Because you sold your truck and
your wife's vehicle
and Lacey's vehicle already. It's gone.
Let's just watch a clip about the contents of the car.
Were you fleeing to Mexico on the day of your arrest? Was that your plan?
I don't understand that at all.
Didn't answer the question. I don't understand that at all. It's not a no.
Are you kidding me? You don't understand how people would think that?
I guess. I don't.
I feel like Amber Fried.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Any common sense thought at all. People are, no more than 45 minutes from the U.S.-Mexico border with all this shit in your car, and it doesn't look like you might be like heading out of the country.
The correct answer, Scott, is, man, I totally understand it. Like, I get it. I understand why people would think that. It looks bad. I'm gonna admit it. It looks bad, but I'm a victim of circumstance. I had that money because I just sold the car, and I needed to keep liquidity because for whatever reason, or I'm the most wanted man in the nation. Of course, I'm going to change my appearance because I'm sick of being harassed. I can't even pump gas without being harassed.
Right.
I totally understand why people would think that I was going to flee to Mexico. That's not what I was doing. But no, that's not his answer. He goes, I don't get that.
A complete flip off to the other direction. It's just like the Diane Sauter interview. Yeah, I told my wife about my girlfriend. Yeah, of course I did. She was fine with it. Dude, it's the wrong answer. People are going to look at you and like, do you think we're stupid?
And then the ride back to Modesto is so fresh. We got to play this one.
Well, there's one more little aspect I want to add to this whole thing about the car.
Go ahead.
Why do you have 4 or 5 freaking cell phones in your car? You can't explain that to me. You can't. There's no good answer that. And I wish she would have asked him that, but of course she didn't do it.
I wish we would have dug into those cell phones a little bit because I want to know which phone he was talking to Amber on. That if we can find that out, that would really help me. People out there, if you're listening, which phone was he talking to Amber on? Because it wasn't. Right. Was it the one that his wife was aware of? I don't think so.
I don't either. And
I don't think so.
are there other calls to somebody else on that cell phone that he's
Right.
talking to Amber to? Yeah, that's a great question.
And he probably kept those phones at his work, you know?
Oh, I'm sure he kept him with him all the time.
So let's check out what
Ride
happens
back.
after he's arrested and he gets a ride back with the cops, and they go to In-N-Out Burger.
Now, just keep in mind that they just found out. when they gave a press
Found
con-
out.
Yeah, the press conference, the DNA has been identified as Lacey and Connor.
That's
That's
right.
why they ran him down and arrested him. Now they're riding back to Modesto.
Well, and this is, I mean, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago on the premiere, and I think in the live, that when the body is found and the DNA is confirmed, that's when they make an arrest.
Yes, that's right.
Without a body, it's hard to make an arrest.
Oh, it's
Once you have a body, now it's time to make an arrest. And if you're going to flee, now is your time to flee. So do you see how the puzzle pieces add up? I can't even believe people would think I would flee the same, right after they found her body and the day the DNA has been confirmed. Oh, this documentary that is kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, it's not really helping him in my eyes. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but here we go.
After Scott was arrested, we started driving back from San Diego to Modesto.
He bowed his head and pushed out a tear. He was quiet. He didn't say nothing. He ate a double-double, from In-N-Out, and a shake and a fries, and gobbled it all down just like nothing.
When they told me, I had just terrible physical reaction, and there's really emotional physical reaction.
The perception and the way it's presented is that it's as though Scott was told his wife and son were dead, and he ordered a cheeseburger 5 minutes later.
They said 15 minutes later, we stopped to get some food, which, by the way, I don't agree with. We see this in some other cases where law enforcement will buy food for suspects.
Yes.
We've seen it in mass shootings where they take them to Burger King, shit like that.
Sure.
This guy, he doesn't get to stop for In-N-Out. I'm sorry. In-N-Out is a treat for someone who's done something good.
Yeah, we're going to stop at the convenience store. You want a bag of chips? I'll get you a bag of chips.
You get water and bread, maybe. You get nothing. You can wait 8 hours till you can get a meal at the jail.
Yeah.
There's a meal waiting for you. 3 Square waiting for you at the jail. We're not buying you In-N-Out.
I'm like you. I don't want anyone to see a defendant mistreated, but not this guy. I'm sorry. I got nothing.
Buying him. Yeah, I don't want to see him mistreated, but I also don't want to see them treated.
Yeah, In-N-Out's a treat.
It is. Those are good burgers, Walter.
Yep.
Another Lebowski reference.
Yeah, I've never had an In-N-Out, but I've heard from too many people.
You're missing
Well,
out.
yeah, we've got some good ones here, but I don't know if it's In-N-Out good. We'll see. Maybe someday they'll build one here. Peterson describes his first night in jail. They throw him into the cell, and there's people outside. They're screaming at him, and there's violence inside the jail, and I'm sure it was a bad experience, but okay, I'm gonna leave it there.
All right, so let's play. Scott Peterson's lawyer makes a motion in court.
If the court wants to talk about prejudicial publicity, having poster-sized pictures of him labeled as a monster in chains, I don't think is conducive to getting a fair trial.
Yes, he's a cheater. Yes, he's a 14-carat a-hole, but he's not a killer.
When did you realize you were going to go fishing? Oh, that was in the morning, you said.
Day one, there was a mistake made. The prosecution claims that Martha Stewart wasn't talking about meringue that morning.
He said, let's roll the tape. And you see it.
Ooh, you want to make little meringues?
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I might even cut that part out of the edit. I just don't think that the meringue thing holds water for me. I don't care about it either way.
It was kind of an egg on your face to the prosecution from the right. It wasn't, to me. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a big deal to me. They made a mistake. Okay, it's not really relevant, I think, to anything. I'm with you. The reason I tagged that clip is because that Geragos lawyer, he was talking about moving the trial from out of Modesto, getting it out of to another jurisdiction. That's what it was about.
Okay.
And him being able to take pretty good control of Scott's legal presence within the courtroom. He's a very strong defense lawyer.
Mm-hmm. I think the next clip that I wanted to share is that they didn't know about the boat, and Brocchini redacted a line in his report, and that becomes a sticking point for the defense.
Yeah, this is Brocchini putting his thumb on the scale, and we've talked about this. I don't agree with it. He should have just left it in and ate it. It goes where it goes. By him removing that line, it looks like he's trying to hide something. And
Do you know what the line was?
It was about a neighbor. It was about someone being at that facility where Scott's shop was, I believe is correct. Pretty sure. But they couldn't find this person apparently, or he couldn't when he went to call him, so he removed it from his report. But this same information was in another detective's report, so it was still available. I guess that's how they found it. I'm not really sure how they found it, but
all right.
Every mistake I made, he turned it into a whole day of talking about it. I testified that nobody knew Scott had a boat. He says Lacey knew he had a boat, but we can't ask her.
Brocchini had redacted a piece of his report.
And I interviewed a man that said Lacey used the bathroom of a lady that owned a shop the day before Lacey was actually missing. So when I got my report back, I deleted that line. I can't reply. I can't say, well, it's in Holmes's report. He's got it all in there.
It felt to me like the Modesto Police Department had basically put their sights on Scott Peterson.
You know, I think Brocchini does make a decent rebuttal to that. I wasn't allowed to say it was in another report. It was in my partner's report.
Yeah.
I wasn't removing it. It just didn't. Anyway. But if you're a defense attorney and you can turn that into a whole day's media spin,
oh yeah, sure.
There you go.
Well, and you're looking to find that one or two jurors that's going to say, "Aha!" So you're
Crooked
willing
cop.
you're willing to put your thumb on the scale because you've got it in for this guy. I don't trust your ass. That's all it takes. Is just one or two. Another thing that I don't know if we'll ever find it out, but who was the shop owner that said Lacey came into the shop to go? And why doesn't Scott have a bathroom in his freaking shop? I don't get that either. But
Yeah, and
whatever.
why is he on the stand?
Yeah, why isn't he on
And
the stand?
And if the
Defense lawyer.
defense finds that, if Garagos finds that, why doesn't he say, "Judge, I want to call this witness. I want to add him to the queue.
Right.
Let's go through the process. I want to get him on the stand. Let's subpoena him."
To rebut Dr. Brocchini here.
That's right.
Really make an idiot out of him.
Right.
That didn't happen. So there's something surrounding this that I'm not quite understanding. Anyway.
But without receipts to prove that it was the 23rd that she was there using the bathroom, it could have been the 20th. It could have been the 19th. It could have been a week before that, before he bought the boat.
Could have been a month before that, for all we know. Have nothing to back that
You got to
up.
have
Nothing.
Receipts. You got to have
camera
receipts.
footage, video, something.
And let me add one more to that. So what if she knew the boat existed?
That's right. It doesn't matter if she knew.
It doesn't matter if she knew that it was there or not.
Not one iota does it matter. Not one. Even if he just said, "Hey, look, I'm going to get this for your dad. He's going to love it. Come on, help me.
Keep it quiet though. Don't tell
keep it
him.
quiet. Keep it quiet, babe. Don't let him know. Don't even tell your mom." Brocchini shouldn't have done it.
Right.
But that damaging, I don't think so. Not for me. No. I don't like it, but yeah, I definitely think you got to play a little bit of Amber Fry, however much of it, because she changed the tone of everything. Everything changed when Amber Fry took the stand. Everything. They played a bunch of these calls in court.
You said you lost your wife. I said that I lost my wife. Yes, you did. I did. And yes. How did you lose her then before she was lost?
They had printed out the transcripts of every single phone call, and you could see the jurors making notes.
Without the Medina burglary being admitted into evidence, there's no other alternate theory.
The defense making the decision to not allow these neighbors that allegedly saw Lacey and the dog over this 10-block walk not getting him on the stand. I don't know. From a defense standpoint, I think that was a really bad decision.
A blunder.
Yeah, I think that was a really bad decision. I don't know why he would do that. Peterson's family thinks he's going home because, again, there's no direct proof. It's all circumstantial against Scott. And I agree with that. It's strong circumstantial, but they're stunned.
Well, let's wrap out this episode with the last clip. Questions on how, when, where, and why were never answered.
Everyone started to realize this doesn't feel like this is right.
There have always been a lot of questions about how, when, where, and why.
If they disregard every piece of evidence that doesn't fit their theory, then their conclusions are going to be tainted. There are a slew of eyewitnesses who saw Lacey Peterson walking her dog.
There's probably 12 to 13 people that never had a face-to-face interview with a detective.
I have forever been bothered by the fact that the jury didn't hear about those witnesses.
I don't think the police looked at the burglary enough to understand the tie-ins to Lacey's disappearance.
There are so many instances where there was evidence that didn't fit the detective's theory.
So that kind of rounds out episode 2, Jack.
I guess the only single thing that I could even put into this, you got to remember the Medinas left the morning of the 24th to go on vacay. They said they didn't leave until 10:30.
That's what I'm saying. This is what's been going on in my head. That's just minutes after
the dog
was found.
Right. Something it won't work.
It doesn't fit.
No, it won't work.
It doesn't fit.
I mean, if the Medinas are correct on their time,
and they're still there at 10:30.
That's right. The neighbor's correct on her time. Let's say 10:15, 10:20. It still doesn't work. Lacey's already gone.
Yeah, unless the Medinas are off on their time.
Correct.
Like you just said. Usually when people leave for vacation, they know what time in the morning they leave.
Typically, that's a kind of we left at noon, or we're leaving at 6 a.m.
It's like what people talk about. It's like when they go on vacation, they're like, well, we left this morning at 10:30 and we had to catch the train to there. And then the flight was at 1 o'clock. And if we would have left any later, we would have never met. That's what people talk about when they're sitting there drinking Mai Tais on the beach.
Right. You're on
they
the
want
phone
to tell
with
you everything about their vacation A to Z, and they know what time they left. And that means that the Medina burglary probably didn't happen in broad daylight at 10:30 in the morning on the 24th.
I agree.
It probably happened in the evening or on Christmas Day.
Yeah, or it's Christmas Day. People are busy, and that's right. I agree.
Everybody's looking the other way, and they're opening presents, and they're not looking out their window.
Nope.
I don't know. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's the part that I don't get, like how they're stuck on that when the Medinas left at 10:30, unless I'm wrong on that time, and we can double check this.
No, it's correct. It's what they said. The Medinas reported they didn't leave until 10:30.
The dog is found at 10:18. They're still at home.
That's right. Burglary didn't happen until after 10:30 a.m.
That's right. So I guess all we can do is move on to episode 3.
That's right.
Well, we were just talking about the Medina burglary, so why don't we talk about that?
717. Okay.
Yeah.
But it finally came down to the burglary across the street. The police characterized the Medina burglary as kind of a meth addict, and it was a crime of opportunity. I suspect that more people were involved in the burglary than Steve Todd and Glenn Pierce. I think it's much more complicated than what the police believe.
Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce admitted telling the police that the burglary happened on December 27th.
When the Medinas were already back from vacation?
Yeah. Well, there's another element here. Remember earlier on, allegedly this confidential informant said that there were up to 5 people involved. Okay, maybe there were 5 other people that maybe knew. But for me, I got to be very clear about this. It wasn't like the Medina house was Fort Knox and it was loaded with gold and whatever precious jewels and the keys to the alien spacecraft that, from Roswell. It's a regular house, probably has some valuables. That's it. So all this other stuff about these, people talking and, these people that rip people off, they told another guy, yeah, we get this house and maybe at some point you go back. They got some good stuff. I don't know about all that. I can't get into that because now we're moving into some conspiracy stuff that I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying I can't go down that road without something tangible, man.
I agree. Well, let's continue because there's a little bit more of that theory that I want to talk about, that the burglars and maybe they saw Lacey. So we'll just dip our toes into that.
I mean, there's a confidential informant that turned him in.
But the problem with that is it doesn't fit her walk then. So she has a confrontation with the burglars and then she goes for a walk and doesn't call the cops or anything.
Yeah, what are they doing? Circling the block and she's just out walking, deciding if she's going to turn them in or not? What? That doesn't work either. It doesn't work. So if she's there that morning and let's just say the Medinas were wrong about the time. They left at 9:30.
Okay.
Lacey's in the house, blah, blah, blah. She sees something screwy going on over across the street. She steps out. These guys see her, and she's like, you guys better get the F out of there. I'm calling the cops. And they trot over the... What?
But at 9:30, Scott's still there.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? He's still
That's
there
right.
at 9:30. He's there at 10:08.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It just it's harder and harder to fit.
And then you can't even back it up
with
these witnesses around the neighborhood that you just talked about.
Right. That doesn't fit then. That story doesn't fit that story.
No.
Because if they abducted her, how is she walking around the neighborhood?
That's right. The only other potential even close to something that, well, I mean, you got to work out the dog, number one. The only the potential thing that I could even come up with, and this is wild too, and it's way out there in freaking Jupiter, is this to say that the robbery did happen that morning after Scott left. Lacey goes out to walk the dog or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She takes off. They see her. She's doing on her walk, blah, blah, blah. And they think, and they're talking, man, this woman, she was just outside. Did she see us? And they lay in wait and grab her. That's the only potential thing, but no one saw anyone grab this pregnant woman. I'm not going there. No way. I can't do it.
So the police were looking for this brown van. The crime lab examines the van and says it's not connected.
I have a problem with the van, and we can go as far into that as you want. I don't know if you want to move into the arson investigator and
sure.
Police chief came out. It was a really high profile development in the case, and they couldn't detect blood.
And this becomes a part of the appeal.
Yeah.
This fabric that was denied. And the only piece I believe that is still surviving to this day is a piece of duct tape. That's the only piece that is still being litigated.
They asked for 14 pieces of things to test for DNA, and only one was allowed. The judge only allowed one. You heard it there at the beginning of that clip. There were about 100 photos taken of this van, and they were given 5 or 6 when they requested these photos. Wasn't many.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like that. Got
like
the photos. Just share them. Just let them have it.
Right.
There was potential evidence from the mailman discovered years later. I don't know if you want to play a little bit of that.
Sure.
Years later, the defense discovers this bit of potential evidence from a mailman. Delivered mail between 10:35, 10:55, and what he did notice was open.
That was the missing piece. Lacey was still home.
Sorry, if the dog wasn't there and the door was open, that doesn't have to mean that she's walking the dog. I'm sorry. You can't make that connection. You're jumping to a conclusion.
She's speculating. A tip came in from a correctional officer, and they go into this. I don't know how far you want to go into it, but we probably should at least mention it, or at least play the clip.
There was a call.
In January 2003, one of the correctional officers overheard a conversation There were rumors on the street. Lacey Peterson had walked up and interrupted a burglary down the street from her house.
Never got the recording. This was material exonerating evidence that should have been turned over.
Let's dig into that a little bit. Was this phone call in January of 2003 about the Medina burglary? This information was already out there, and they're kind of just repeating something that they already heard. I mean, the Medina burglary was a known thing. It was out in the public almost immediately.
Yep.
It's not a big step to go, and I'm sure people had speculated that maybe she confronted them. Maybe that's what. So, you know what I'm saying? Like the information, the theory had already been out there by January of 2003.
Absolutely.
So is it a unique piece of evidence? I don't know. If there was funny business and they tried to hide it, then that's bull, and they shouldn't be. That should not happen. They should not be doing that.
If that's putting your thumb back on the scale again, and
absolutely
can't do that. But
maybe what was the watch? I never really followed that. What happened with the watch?
Apparently, Lacey inherited this pretty expensive watch from her grandmother, and allegedly this watch ended up in a pawn shop. And the cops were aware of it and went and talked to this pawn shop dealer, owner. And, well, the watch seems to have disappeared. Yeah.
That she had inherited from her grandmother.
It had a bezel with diamonds around it. We joked about it. We called it her rapper watch.
Lady came in and she sold us a 14 karat gold Proton watch.
And was that Lacey's watch?
But the first time I heard that the police knew about it being pawned was well after I was arrested. The police had shared this with us.
It should have been turned over to the defense. Never turned over to the defense.
This watch was not followed up on. I strongly believe that there's a strong possibility that we're missing reports. It was confirmed we were missing reports on this burned van. Mark Garagos initially had a few files on this van, but he did not have photos of that bloodstained mattress.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where her brain is going. I understand it. I get it. The watch, like was just said, it may have been her watch. It may not have been her watch.
The watch is a big deal for me, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If this was actually Lacey's watch, there could have been DNA that could have been identified as hers in that watch. And if the Modesto Police Department took that watch and have kept it, now that's putting your foot on the scale, and I got a problem with that.
Yeah, that's
bad.
Yeah,
it's bad,
unacceptable.
And to not turn over the report that they went and interviewed this pawn shop dealer, I got a problem with that.
I mean, I can see where they're trying to find this wiggle room here. And you can't withhold evidence. A mistake is a mistake. Withholding evidence is a different thing.
That's intentional.
Right.
Well, I mean, Peterson's taken off death row, I think, after 8 or 9 years. LA Business Project gets involved, about that. Detective Burkini, he's showing these things from the Innocence Project. He calls it all bullshit. It's just all bullshit. He's all pissed off. Burkini says that all these tipsters, these neighbors were interviewed. That's what he says. Now, I don't, I'm going to leave that with what he said. I don't know that. I don't know if you want to move into the DNA motion hearing.
Absolutely.
A huge decision here for this judge to try to determine whether there can be new DNA testing done on these pieces of evidence.
I asked for informal discovery. I asked for DNA testing. We reject the claim.
Paula Mitchell said, I've never had this kind of resistance. The DNA on the duct tape on the pants are going to be tested.
If someone else's DNA is on duct tape, that doesn't get Scott a new trial. That releases Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Absolutely. The duct tape would. And it's starting to make sense to me that if you find DNA on that duct tape that's not Scott's, Connor's, or Lacey's, that is a clear indication that someone else is involved.
Yes.
If you find, because it's so tied to the crime, a van, a little cloth piece, it's not tied to the crime. Like, we know that it hasn't been tied to the crime. There has been, and that kind of makes sense to me why they would deny that. But that's, we're in the weeds here. We're in the legal weeds, the
Yes.
legalese of why it wasn't. And Travis a couple weeks ago explained it to us on a live. I feel like I understood when he said it, and I feel like now a couple weeks later I don't understand, even a few hours later, and I don't understand it again. Like, I need it drilled down again, why that motion 405 or whatever it was,
1405, yeah.
1405 didn't require the state. And like, we've had this argument many times before. It should just let them test the DNA.
Just
Let's
test
get finality.
That's right. And if it comes back to some other person, and let's just say that person died, and there's no investigation, and now you got another problem with the police department, in my opinion. I don't know when they detected that there was human DNA, and there wasn't enough to determine a profile. But if it was back then, I mean, we're 18 years later, whatever, 20 years later, there have been a million advancements in DNA testing at this point.
That's right.
From then.
Yeah.
A 1,000,000%. Test it. Get finality.
What if Scott's DNA comes back on that duct tape?
He's screwed.
Then I'm going to say 110% he's guilty. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Like Travis made the point in our previous live, 4 months in salt water, and you think you're going to find a robust DNA sample on there?
Not likely.
It's almost like the court's like, yeah, go ahead and try.
Yeah, not likely. I'd be shocked if they found anything but, like I said, fish or crab DNA.
And then the last clip we got is an email from Detective Brocchini.
Well, yeah, there's a series of screenshots that the documentarian put in, but I think you could probably play a few of these to kind of round out and shows where she ended up when she finished the documentary.
It ends when they test the DNA. That's when it ends.
That's right. Because there is nothing else.
I went into this documentary thinking that it was going to be only about Scott's side, and it was going to be slanted, and that it was going to have I didn't feel that. I feel like they gave them an opportunity to present their side, but I don't feel like the documentarian was slanted to only share that. I feel like it was pretty fair. It opens up questions that some of them might be rabbit holes, some of them might be legitimate, but overall, as a documentary that came out a week after or 2 weeks after the other documentary series, as a couple, I really enjoyed being able to see these two documentaries in short
contrasting.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think the documentarian did a really good job of maintaining a more unbiased approach, because she did show things that were really unfavorable to Scott. It wasn't just, and not showing any of that. So I think I think she did a good job.
It didn't have me quite as upset as the other one. I was pretty irate with Scott Peterson in the other one, and this one didn't draw those emotions out of me. So if I would have to rate them grade wise, I'm going to grade the other one a little higher, just because of how effective it was at drawing that out. And maybe that was Scott, not the documentarian, but I enjoyed this one. I'm glad I was able to see it. It re-sparked interest in this case for me. I have a feeling that a lot of people that watched this one with us and in the lives, it also sparked that for them too. So that's interesting to check out. I will be, really interested to see what people have to say during our live coming up after this premiere. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree with your sentiment. The Lacey's documentary on Netflix, it really, I was mad as hell. I was hot, man. I was really fired up. This one, not so much. I think she did a really good, pretty balanced job. And I'm sure for her, knowing going into it about putting his out there, that she probably was going to get some backlash. And I think that's kind of unfair. I don't want to see that to any real documentarian that's just seeking truth. I don't. So good for her for doing it, having the courage to stand up and say, you know what, look, we need to get this part out. And I think we did learn some things we didn't learn from the Peterson doc. I mean, about the watch, that's a big freaking deal to me. That watch more so than the van. If that's Lacey's watch, we got a problem, Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the part that was going through my mind was, well, Scott was selling everything off.
Well,
maybe Scott sold it and had someone sell it for him. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's what I'm saying. We got a problem. Either way, it's a problem. But I did learn a lot, so good job.
Yeah, overall, I'm going to say, really interesting documentary. Glad that we watched it. Had me definitely captivated through the 3 episodes, and I'm glad that we did it. So with that said, I hope you guys join us for the live after the show. You can join the studio if you're in the chat. We'll drop that. Hoping that we get our regular crew to kind of join in and see what other people's opinions are. We just pulled clips that we liked. Maybe there's something we missed. Maybe there's an important point that, as we've said before, we're big boys. We can take the criticism. So let us know if we missed something. Throw it in the comments. Join us in the live after the premiere. But that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining Documentary Club. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jack.
And we'll see you on the next one.